My name is JR, and this is my story.
And I'm a picky eater, but that doesn't have anything to do with what we're doing here right now.
So I grew up in small town Glendive, Montana. The average Joe family went to church on Sundays. Once they got a divorce, my mom, about a year later, met a trucker. She married him, and he was a goofball. My dad at that time, he had a couple different girlfriends going back and forth, but then he found one in western Montana that he really loved, and they got married and moved to Alaska. After they moved to Alaska, my mom and her husband were having problems, and they ended up getting divorced too. England was always a big dream of hers, and so this guy that she was talking to, who was from England, she was very attracted to him, and so she ended up moving over there with him and getting married also. When she moved to England, I moved to Alaska, and up in Alaska is when I started getting in trouble. In the 6th grade, I started smoking cigarettes and smoking pot, and that progressed into more stuff later on. 7th and 8th grade was real troubled times in school. 7th grade, I got kicked out of a couple different schools for fighting and for drugs. I moved to England in the 7th grade, and while I was there, it was a lot of the same thing. And I would just go out and party and drink and do drugs and stuff. So I moved back to Alaska, and I dropped out of school for about a year in the 8th grade. I found out that my dad was injecting meth. When I found out he did it, it kind of hurt. Didn't look at my dad the same after that. My dad was taking me to work one day and passed by the gas station, and I wanted to get an energy drink before we went to work. When I told him that, he said, "Oh, no problem, we don't need an energy drink. You can try some of this stuff I got," talking about meth. He kept on asking me if I wanted some, and because I was falling asleep and stuff. And so finally I told him that I would smoke some meth with him. And my dad was proud of me. After that, I smoked meth for 2 years. I wasn't living with him at the time, and I was living with some of his friends that also were on meth and things. And while I was living with them, my dad came to me, and he gotten into trouble because he'd stolen a bunch of stuff, and he wanted to get out of town and asked if I wanted to go with him down to Georgia, where he was from. When I moved down there, we moved in with my grandma, and she made me start going to school and stuff. I decided then that I wanted to try to start doing a little bit better for myself, but I was still into drugs, pot, sex, porn, and started getting a little more heavy into meth. It was more available down there. Started talking to my mom a little more often, and she was telling me how her life had changed because she decided to take Jesus seriously, but I wasn't having any of it. And so for my 16th birthday, my mom sent me a Bible. Every now and then I would open it up and read it while I was stoned or while I was drunk or whatever, and I'd take a look at it. And it was during that time that God was really starting to work in me, and I didn't even know it. My mom wanted to move back to Glendive because this is where she was from, and she asked me and my sister to go with her. My sister didn't want to go, but I decided to, and so when I moved back to Glendive, I started going to church with my uncle. At this time, I had kind of realized that I didn't want to be like my dad and be a meth addict, and I didn't want to lose my kids, and I didn't want to live a life like that. And so I decided that I wanted something different. And while I was going to church, I was going to youth group and stuff, and at youth group I prayed a prayer for salvation, and it was the beginning of a new life, I guess. But it didn't have too much of an effect on my life. I was still smoking pot and drinking and stuff. 3 months after I got baptized, I went to Bible camp. And at Bible camp, God really spoke to me and showed me love and life worth living. He showed it to me through the youth pastors at the camp, and when I saw them, and it seemed like just God was working through them so much, and I knew that was what I wanted, and not to just stop after a certain period, but to live my whole life for God. After that, I came back into Glendive and threw away all my bad music, and I stopped hanging out with the friends that I was hanging out with, and surrounded myself with Christian people and people that knew the truth. I went back to school, and we were doing Bible studies, and we were getting together all the time praying, and God provided a man in my life just to lead me in godliness, to show me the ways how to act and stuff and in my new life. Just through this growing process and everything, God gave me a passion in my life to share this love and this forgiveness that He had given to me to other people. God just put a peace in my heart to let me know that He had forgiven me, and that I was going to heaven, and that the life ahead of me was so much better than the life before me.
God healed me of that. God made it so much different in my life that I knew that I had life worth living.
People should know that God can heal them. Everybody was made for a purpose, and that's what God showed me after I got saved, and He's molding me now into the person that He made me to be. God gave me life. So through life and the choices that we make, and Satan doing everything he can to change us, we're molded into people that we're not supposed to be. But God, He changes us. He forms us into what we're supposed to be. God changed my life. Has He changed yours?